the most productive is to think minus the Eurocentric lenses. Now, a lot of people will ask that how are you even saying this while sitting in the United States, teaching at an American institution? So, but this is not an anomaly. This is what's happening here in the academia in the moment, especially in gender studies and women's studies. That Black feminists and Chicano, Hispanic feminists, Latinx activists, all kinds of feminists from the marginalized communities, they are thinking about how to decolonize the narrative, especially around gender and conflict. And because gender and conflict is not something that happens only during a war. That's another thing that we also need to keep in mind, that gender and conflict kind of is synonymous in that sense. It keeps happening even during ideal social times. So that would be my focus. And when I say decolonization or decoloniality or thinking about decolonial praxis, that is essentially thinking through your own productive cultural lenses and looking at what does gender mean in our own culture, and what does conflict do to gender in that idiom. So that would be that's kind of my premise here. Just to think about now that we're kind of going, I do have a PowerPoint that we could kind of like use just to plant these ideas. Would you be amenable? I might take a minute to bring that and then kind of like maybe beam it. I have never used Google Hangout before to do a screen share, so you will have to help me there. So is it okay if I take a minute to bring some slides in, just to get the definitions right?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Aswati, sometimes it's better if the resource person emails one of us the PPT and then one of us projects it.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll just send you the PowerPoint.
Difficult navigating for someone who's new to the platform. You could send it to Aswati, Ather, your PPT.
Just she has. Jessica, quickly just WhatsApp me your mail ID as well.
Yes, ma'am, I'll just do it.
Jessica just asked Anna to also post that there was a disruption and that we are coming back with the PPT by the speaker.
Jessica, I've just mailed it to you
Oh,
as well.
I already I sent it. I thought I lost you guys. I was trying to relog. I mean, log back in.
No, no, I got it. I got it.
You got it? Okay. Oh, I thought I lost you guys. So how do we screen share? I think this is I can screen share from here. So if that doesn't work, then we can kind of like
I'm just.
Can you see the panel below your screen, Ather? There are all these icons, a mic, a
yeah, I'm
camera.
doing that.
Can you see a box which says present now?
I think it says I think I'm sharing something. Are you able to
Yes,
see
yes, yes.
We can see.
Yes, we can see. Yes.
So I'd kind of like to begin with this. I'm not seeing you guys for some reason if I'm like showing all of this. So I don't know. I'm speaking to a completely blank screen. I mean, the presentation. Are you able to see me on or see this? Is what's happening at your end? Just my voice and this? Is that okay?
We can see a small screen of you speaking, and we can see
Okay.
PPT as well.
Okay. So I think this is where I'd like to begin. I feel like this might work better because it might give us some rubric to work with. So when I was talking about thinking about conflict and gender and quest for justice, I'd kind of like to begin with thinking about women in our own homes. And I mean, these are mostly Kashmiri women. But when we look at these women and when we look at the idea and the perception of women, we have these women, these pictures with pictures from the rest of South Asia, and it can be from in different Indian states, it could be from Bangladesh, also Pakistan. Women in different iterations, working, living, doing their jobs, and not necessarily in the professional mainstream formal jobs, but also in informal sectors and in their homes, like you see them in various iterations, sitting, praying, doing something, spinning, and just hanging out and cleaning their vegetables and all of that. So when we see women like this is something that we are kind of uh, we associate with this. We know this, and the reason I'm kind of beginning with this is because about the Eurocentric knowledges, whether they be in anthropology, they be in sociology, they be in gender studies or feminist theory, we know that these are there is a heavy and the germ of all those knowledges that is based in feminist theory, and that kind of like finds its space in feminist theory, that has also found its space in different disciplines. And why am I talking about this when I have to kind of like jump and talk about conflict and gender? Because I feel like most of the time, whenever we think about quest for justice, uh, our lens is essentially Eurocentric if we are placing ourselves in the feminist theory of what we know before what has happened, before thinking about decoloniality. So usually when we think about the Eurocentrism or we think about the academe, what has been produced about women is really written through a stereotypical, or it has a very sensationalist undertone, and thinking about the colonial gaze, and also thinking about scientific racism and manifest destiny. Just to give you a quick overview of what scientific racism means, like if you think about the Black women here and the women who had been, when transatlantic slave trade was happening, and the kind of injustices that not only happened to men, but also to women and to other genders as well, but through the lens of science, and also thinking about manifest destiny, that these are people which were quote unquote, I know this sounds offensive, but just bear with me, that these people are primitives, and that wasn't only limited to people from Africa, but also people from South Asia, India, and what is now India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So all of these kind of are the bread and butter of Eurocentric academia. And I think that's something we have to consider when we are using lenses to understand gender and we are thinking about conflict. And I know that Ashwati, she mentioned some, I think she mentioned not Eurocentric scholars, but most of the scholars, even like the way I have been trained, is in Eurocentric theory and is in Eurocentric academe. And sometimes I wonder, like, why did I even come here to study? And why couldn't I do the same thing back in Kashmir or back in South Asia somewhere? Why is it that we have to turn our gaze west to understand our own selves? And I think that's the moment, and that's where I kind of like, when I think about conflict and gender, and I think about Kashmir, I'm like, what are the lenses that I can use, and what is happening in this moment? I feel like staying here and working here, it's becoming increasingly difficult to talk about gender and justice when we know that we are basically sitting on a settler colonial genocide here. And that has not been talked about a lot. And I think these positionalities are very important for us to think. If we are thinking feminist praxis, then we do have to think about our positionalities. Like, where are we speaking from? And how does gender justice look like? And why isn't gender justice, quote unquote, arriving? And there's this huge theory, and I kind of like, I'm bringing again a Eurocentric theorist, when Derrida talks about that justice is always in the arrival, it never arrives. The fact is that why isn't justice arriving? And that's a philosophical question. But on the other hand, the fact is that we are also not thinking with our own lenses. We don't really know. Especially when we think through theory, we have to do multiple translations. We are kind of like taking over this Eurocentric tradition and trying to kind of understand our own rubrics and our own societies. So early on, you had people like Chandra Mohanty when they are talking about third world feminisms, and they are trying to make the West understand that the lenses that you're using to stand the rest of the doing, they were also trying to understand Black femininity. They were also trying to understand how Black feminism looks like. And that was also a movement, not a growing movement. It was also a grown movement, so to speak. It actually grew alongside what is known as liberal feminism. So in that moment, I think that's a very, when we're thinking through feminist praxis, we have to understand that most of the gender systems that were seeded in feminine logic of colonial modernity, which basically was this gender system where there was a hierarchical domination, where the binary was, so you can kind of like go through these salient points. I won't go through all of them. But this of what was kind of driving the idea of thinking about gender and thinking about men and women, masculinity and femininity. So you also had not just the dichotomy of men and women here, but they were also imposing this dichotomy, the colonial modernity, which was also imposed on India, which is why you had, technically you had till 2018, till till you had the law against homosexuality, which was eliminated. That was kind of like this ideal of the Bagri Act, which was
it's not visible to us.
No, I am not changing any slide.
All right.
No, I'm just kind of like thinking about the gender and logic of colonial modernity. Right. So I'm not changing them yet. So what I'm trying to say is that the kind of gender by dichotomy that was imposed also what is now India, which was the British India and the princely states at that time. So that was the logic of colonial modernity, and I think that was also the part of feminist theory that was being imposed on the rest of the world, to which third world feminism was a response, post-colonial feminism was a response. And then we also have to understand this, what we are dealing with, especially in non-West. And the reason I call it non-West is because I'm not essentially speaking about India. I'm essentially, or Pakistan or Bangladesh. I'm essentially speaking about places that had been colonized, especially the non-West. And in those, you can also think about the Middle Eastern countries, you can think about Pakistan, you can also think about Afghanistan. So, and this becomes very important. And I'm not taking you on the reason I'm kind of beginning from here is because we cannot think about gender and justice, modes of gender and justice, and how to ameliorate them, because we have talked enough about them. We know how to theorize them, but we have to go beyond it. Like, how do you solve these? And these cannot be solved through the rubrics that you get from Eurocentric academia. And you also have, and I know it's ironic, while being in a Eurocentric academia, I'm talking about this, but I'm very confident in the fact that there is enough mass of critical scholars who are non-Western and but are thinking through the lenses of their own cultures as to how to think about ameliorating issues of gender justice in our own societies. So thinking about Western masculine model of development, this is very much it's actively unfolding in India today. You see this from the protests with the farmers to all the laws that are being changed. You see the neoliberal heart that's kind of like not just the neoliberal, but also supremacist heart at some level, kind of like unfolding. And I'm not using all the lenses and all the current politics to kind of talk about here, because I think we're kind of like establishing something theoretical, and I'm kind of like doing this turn where I do not want to talk through the old lenses. I really want us to think through the decolonial lens. So what you basically had, what Western masculine model was perpetrating on the non-West was that they themselves understood women. They were not seen as someone who was equal. They were not seen as someone. So in the West, if you think about the role of women, the status of women, you kind of like can come from the Victorian age and see how they were repressed during those times, and how the dichotomy of sexes was really, really established. So women were not understood as a complement, but they were understood as someone who reproduced the race and capital through her sexual purity, passivity, and being homebound in service of the white European bourgeoisie man. So that was really prevalent here. It wasn't prevalent in most of the non-Western cultures. And, they really had to fight against the system, the women here. And I think the women in non-West, they fight differently. If you let's think about voting for a minute. Did Indian women, I'm talking about your country right now, did Indian women have to fight for vote? They did not. But here, women till 1922, they did not have the right to vote. So we have to kind of like, we don't have parallel we don't have parallel struggles. Our struggles are not the same. And why are we using the same lenses? Why are we applying the lenses that have been grown here to understand women here, to understand women there? Why is it that we have to go through this entire gamut of their theory to understand our own selves? And I see that irony in myself. I had different reasons to come out here and study Kashmir, because while you're in Kashmir, you can't really study Kashmir. You can't really write about it in the honest manner that you want to as a Kashmiri, from a Kashmiri vantage. So my reasons for coming here were not just to kind of like come to American academia for its theory and kind of trying to understand something different, but it was really to gain that distance so that I can talk about Kashmir maybe in a more freer manner, or maybe having more academic freedoms. But it was very clear to me early on that the lenses that I am being taught, maybe they don't work, all of them do not work for me, and they might not work for you as well, as you're looking at the situations in different places in India or wherever it is that you're researching. So you also have to think that, when we're thinking about most of the literature on conflict and gender also comes through the ideal and mirror of a liberal feminism, which is deeply